Nora stood in front of the mirror, her hands slightly trembling as she looked at her reflection. The engagement hall in Lekki shimmered with gold lights, laughter, and expensive perfumes. Everyone looked perfect, men in designer suits, women in sparkling dresses. But Nora wore something different, a soft ivory gown she had designed and sewn herself. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was simple, with lace from her late mother's old wedding dress, carefully mixed with Ankara patterns that showed both beauty and tradition. To Nora, it was special, a piece of her heart stitched into fabric. As more guests arrived, whispers began to float around. Is she really wearing that? She couldn't afford a real designer? Nora tried to ignore them. She adjusted the sleeve gently, pretending not to hear. But then Aunt Felicia walked up, her tall heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. Felicia's eyes scanned Nora from head to toe, her lips curling into a smirk. Nora, my dear, this is the dress? You made it yourself, right? She asked, pretending to sound impressed. Nora smiled softly. Yes, Ma. I wanted something simple and personal. Felicia laughed so loudly that nearby guests turned to watch. Personal? You mean poor? My niece, at her own engagement, wearing a tailor's experiment. The laughter that followed burned in Nora's ears. Some relatives shook their heads. A few even took pictures. Her fiancé, David, stepped closer, frowning. Auntie, please, he began, but Felicia waved him off with a fake smile. Let's be honest, son. When you marry down, these are the kind of moments you'll get. The words hit Nora like a slap. Her throat tightened. She wanted to run, to hide, to vanish from the glittering hall filled with judgmental eyes and flashing cameras. At the back of the room, a tall man in a dark suit was quietly watching. Tommy Lawson, the famous designer who had made the groom's family's clothes. His eyes lingered on Nora's gown, not with mockery, but with curiosity. He leaned slightly forward, studying the stitching, his expression thoughtful. Then, as if she hadn't humiliated Nora enough, Felicia raised her voice again. Someone tagged the designer of this dress, a beg. Let's know who did this village work. Laughter erupted again. Nora blinked back tears, forcing herself to stand still, her heart breaking with every chuckle. But before she could turn away, the tall man at the back, Tommy Lawson, began to step forward. The noise in the room slowly faded as he walked closer, his eyes still fixed on Nora's handmade dress. After her mother's death, Nora was raised by Aunt Felicia, who never missed a chance to belittle her. Felicia often said she wanted to raise Nora properly, but in truth, she treated her like a housemaid. Nora cooked, cleaned, and ran errands while Felicia's own daughters went to parties and lived freely. Whenever Nora tried to rest or sew, Felicia would scold her. Stop wasting time with that sewing machine, she would snap. You think you'll feed yourself with thread and cloth? But sewing was the only thing that made Nora feel close to her late mother. Her mother had been a local tailor, humble, kind, and talented. She used to tell Nora, every stitch tells a story, my daughter. Let your hands speak when words fail you. So whenever life felt too heavy, Nora would sew. She started small, fixing old clothes, designing small dresses for children in the neighborhood. People noticed her creativity, but Felicia saw it as foolishness. Who will marry a girl smelling of fabric dye? She often said. Despite the harsh words, Nora grew into a gentle and thoughtful young woman. She learned patience, kindness, and quiet strength. Then she met David. He wasn't like the others. He saw beauty in her simplicity, in the way she smiled even after being insulted, and in how she talked about her dreams. They met at a friend's art exhibition. Nora had gone there to deliver a handmade outfit, and David was instantly drawn to her. He admired her honesty and humility. When he learned she made her own clothes, he was impressed, not embarrassed. But his family wasn't so understanding. His mother and relatives whispered that Nora wasn't their class. They believed David needed a woman from a rich, polished background, not a girl who grew up with a sewing needle. Still, David stood by her. He believed in her dream of opening a small fashion studio one day. When it was time for their engagement, Nora planned to buy a dress from a famous designer. But her best friend Linda stopped her. Girl, if you hide your gift today, you'll keep hiding forever, Linda told her. Nora sighed. But what if they laugh at me? Linda grinned. Then they'll choke on it later. Those words stayed with Nora. That night, she pulled out her sewing kit, her mother's old scissors, and a box of lace she had kept for years. It was lace from her mother's wedding gown, yellowed a bit with age but still beautiful. Nora cleaned and restored it carefully, feeling as if her mother was beside her. She worked through the nights, her fingers sore and her eyes tired. But her heart was full. Every stitch was done with love and memory. The dress was a blend of old and new. Ivory fabric mixed with traditional Ankara embroidery. It wasn't the work of a rich designer, but it was full of meaning. While Nora worked quietly in her small room, Aunt Felicia was busy showing off. She told everyone at church and on her WhatsApp group that she was finally marrying off her late sister's daughter. God is faithful, she would say proudly. Even with that girl's quiet nature, I managed to find her a good man. In truth, Felicia wasn't happy for Nora. She only cared about how the engagement would make her look, the fancy hall, the guests, the expensive food, and the photos that would make her seem important. She didn't care that Nora's heart was nervous, that she just wanted the day to be about love, not competition. To Felicia, life was all about appearances, the right clothes, the right people, the right gossip. But to Nora, life was about meaning, the hands that stitched, the memories that stayed, the love that didn't need to be loud to be real. As the engagement day drew closer, Nora looked at her finished gown and smiled softly. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. Maybe they won't understand it, she whispered to herself. But it's me. And deep down, she hoped that somehow her mother would be proud, not of the fancy party or the expensive guests, but of her daughter who had found beauty in simplicity. Back at the engagement hall, the laughter and whispers grew louder. What had started as a few quiet comments turned into open mockery. Guests pointed at Nora's dress, comparing it to a cheap copy of a designer gown. Some even took pictures, sending them to group chats with laughing emojis. David's relatives shook their heads, whispering, "She's not really his class." Nora stood still, her heart pounding. The music played, but all she could hear were the cruel voices around her. Aunt Felicia smiled proudly, enjoying every bit of the attention. She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Let's make this fun," she said to a friend who was a small fashion influencer. "Come and review this dress live. People will love it." Within minutes, the influencer arrived, wearing shiny heels and holding a phone on a selfie stick. She started a live stream, speaking loudly for everyone to hear. Fashion lovers. "So I'm at this big engagement in Lekki, and you have to see the bride's gown," she said, turning the camera toward Nora. "What do we call this, please?" "Village couture." The crowd burst into laughter again. Nora's vision blurred as her eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled. She wanted to disappear, to hide somewhere no one could see her pain. David tried to hold her hand, but she gently pulled away. "Please not now," she whispered. She turned toward the exit, hoping to escape the humiliation, when a deep voice cut through the noise. "Excuse me, madam," the voice said firmly. "That dress, I know it." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Tommy Lawson, the famous fashion designer who had made the groom's family's outfits. He stood tall and calm, his eyes fixed on Nora's gown. Felicia blinked in confusion. "Know it?" she asked, forcing a laugh. "It's just some local tailor's work, a beg." Tommy stepped closer, his expression serious. "Who made this gown?" he asked. Felicia raised her chin. "Some local girl. My niece said she made it herself, but obviously, it's a poor imitation." Tommy's voice grew sharper. "Wrong. This is not imitation. This is one of my prototype designs, a sketch from a private mentorship program I ran 5 years ago. I recognized the pattern of the stitches and the detail on the lace. Only one student ever completed it." The crowd gasped. Phones started recording again, but this time, no one was laughing. Nora's hands shook. She could hardly breathe. Tommy turned toward her, his eyes softening. "It was you, wasn't it? You were Norad from Yabatek, the student who completed my mentorship project." Nora's eyes widened. She could barely speak. She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Yes, I was." The influencer's phone dropped slightly as she stared in shock. Felicia's mouth opened, but no words came out. "Wait, what? You were that student Tommy praised in his magazine interview?" Tommy nodded proudly. "Yes. She was one of the best. I always wondered what happened to her. And today, I find her here, wearing a masterpiece she made herself." The room erupted, but this time, not in laughter. Guests whispered in amazement. Cameras flashed again, But now they captured admiration, not mockery. David's relatives looked embarrassed. The influencer quietly ended her live stream. Even Felicia's smile disappeared completely. Nora stood frozen, tears still in her eyes, but now they weren't tears of shame. They were tears of relief, of disbelief, of long-awaited recognition. The same dress everyone mocked had just been revealed as a design by one of Nigeria's top fashion mentors, a lost prototype brought to life by the very woman they ridiculed. And in that moment, the girl they called Village Couture became the center of every camera, every whisper, and every stunned heart in the room. The story exploded online overnight. Within hours, videos from the engagement ceremony spread across social media. Clips of Tommy Lawson stepping forward to defend Nora's dress filled every platform. One headline read, "Designer recognizes his own work in bride's handmade dress." Another said, "From mockery to masterpiece, the woman who shocked Lagos." People reposted the video again and again. Some called Nora brave, others called her story inspiring. Fans praised her for standing tall despite the humiliation. Fashion pages compared her handmade gown to expensive designer dresses, saying it carried heart and heritage. But while the internet loved her, Aunt Felicia did not. Instead of apologizing, Felicia went on social media herself. She told everyone that Tommy Lawson had only praised Nora to be polite. In interviews, she claimed she had always encouraged Nora to follow her dreams. "I knew she had talent," she said, pretending to smile. "I'm proud to have guided her." Nora saw the clips and felt sick. Every word was a lie. Felicia had mocked her all her life. Now she wanted to steal her moment. At home, Nora tried to stay calm, but her heart was full of confusion. She didn't know whether to be happy or angry. She felt grateful for Tommy's kindness, but also embarrassed that the world had seen her being mocked. Every time she opened her phone, she saw her face in another post, another article, another comment. David tried to comfort her. "It's all positive now," he said. "People love you." Nora sighed. "You don't understand, David. All my life, I've been someone's embarrassment." David touched her shoulder gently. "You're not an embarrassment. You're the story everyone's talking about, for the right reason this time." But Nora didn't smile. The pain ran deeper than what a few headlines could fix. A few days later, Nora received an unexpected call. It was Tommy Lawson himself. His tone was warm and respectful. "Nora, I've been thinking about you," he said. "Your gown has something special. It's real, it's soulful. I'm preparing for Lagos Fashion Week, and I'd like to feature your design in my show. Maybe even let you design a few pieces under my guidance." Nora froze. "Me? At Lagos Fashion Week?" Tommy chuckled. "You've already proven yourself. You just need a stage. Think about it." After the call, Nora sat on her bed, staring at her sewing machine. She wanted to say yes, but doubt filled her mind. Did she really deserve this? Or was it just pity? Meanwhile, Felicia saw the same news online, that Tommy Lawson wanted to work with Nora, and her anger burned hotter. People began calling her the lucky aunt of the rising designer. Invitations came for TV interviews. She happily accepted them, smiling for the cameras while spinning her lies. "I always knew my niece had something special," she told reporters. "In fact, I'm the one who encouraged her to keep sewing. I used to buy fabric for her, even when others doubted her." Nora watched the interview on her phone and felt her chest tighten. That was the same woman who once threw her mother's sewing kit in the trash. Later that evening, Felicia showed up at Nora's apartment, wearing her most expensive outfit and fake humility. "Nora, my dear," she began sweetly, "I think we should plan your next steps carefully. These people will use you if you're not smart. Let me handle the media for you. You're not used to this world." Nora stared at her in disbelief. "You want to handle my story? After everything?" Felicia's smile faded. "Don't start that. I've done a lot for you." Nora's voice grew cold. "You didn't raise me, Aunt Felicia. You survived me." Felicia's eyes widened. "Excuse me. All these years," Nora continued, "you tried to crush me. Now that people finally see my worth, you want to share the light. But where were you when I was crying over torn fabric? When you told me sewing was useless?" Felicia's face hardened. "You think because one designer called your name, you've arrived? Be careful, Nora. Pride comes before a fall. You'll embarrass us all." At that moment, Tommy Lawson walked into the studio. He had come to discuss their collaboration. He stopped near the doorway, hearing the last part of the argument. "Embarrass who?" he asked quietly. Felicia jumped. "Oh, Mr. Lawson. I was just..." Tommy raised a hand. "I've seen enough. Nora doesn't need anyone to speak for her. She's talented, hardworking, and original. The only embarrassment here is how she's been treated." Felicia opened her mouth to reply but couldn't. She picked up her bag and stormed out, her heels clicking angrily on the floor. When she left, Tommy turned to Nora. "Don't let people like that define you," he said softly. "They laugh until they can't ignore you. Then they try to take credit. Stay focused. You have something rare, authenticity." Nora nodded, her eyes wet with silent tears. For the first time in her life, someone powerful wasn't laughing at her. He was believing in her. That night, Nora opened her sketchbook again. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt stronger. She began to draw, lines flowing across the paper like freedom. Each design carried a piece of her story, pain, love, and survival woven together. The mockery that once crushed her now fueled her fire. She was no longer just the girl they laughed at. She was becoming the woman they would remember. Lagos Fashion Week. The final night. The air buzzed with excitement, music, and flashing lights. Famous designers, models, and celebrities filled the grand hall, waiting for the last show of the evening. Threads of Grace, a new collection by Nora Daniels under Tommy Lawson's mentorship. Backstage, Nora took a deep breath. Her hands were slightly shaking, but her heart was steady. She looked around at the dresses hanging neatly on the racks, pieces she had designed over sleepless nights. Every outfit told a story of strength, loss, and healing. At the center of it all was her engagement dress, the same one that had once been mocked and laughed at. Now it had been redesigned with delicate gold embroidery along the edges, shining softly under the lights. It was more than a dress now. It was a symbol. Tommy walked over to her, smiling proudly. "You've come a long way, Nora," he said. "Whatever happens out there, remember, this is your moment." Nora nodded. "Thank you, sir, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Meanwhile, somewhere near the back of the hall, Aunt Felicia slipped in quietly. She wore dark sunglasses and a fake smile. The humiliation from the engagement party still haunted her, and she couldn't bear the thought of Nora being praised again. Her voice was low as she whispered to a backstage assistant, handing him a small envelope. "Switch that main dress," she said. "The one in the center. Replace it with the other one. Yes, that plain copy. Hurry before the show starts." The assistant hesitated but took the money and did as told. Minutes before the models were to step out, Tommy came to inspect the outfits one last time. As his sharp eyes scanned the gowns, something caught his attention. The centerpiece dress looked wrong. The lace was dull, the stitching different. "Wait," he said firmly. "Who touched this?" The assistant froze, stammering. I was told to change it, sir. A woman said it was part of the plan." Tommy's face hardened. Security. Within moments, guards surrounded the area. Felicia was found trying to sneak away. "Madam," a guard said, blocking her path. Felicia spun around, her voice sharp. "Let me go. This ungrateful girl wouldn't even have a show if not for me." Tommy stepped forward, his voice calm but strong. "Ungrateful? She worked for everything she has. You tried to destroy her again and still she rose." Felicia's face twisted with anger. "She'll embarrass us all." "On the contrary," Tommy replied. "Tonight, she'll make you proud, whether you admit it or not." He nodded at security, and they escorted Felicia out of the building as she shouted and kicked. But Nora didn't hear the noise. She was too focused. The lights dimmed. The music began. Model after model stepped onto the runway, each wearing one of Nora's designs, dresses made from lace, silk, and ankara. The audience gasped as they walked. The collection was unlike anything they had seen. Elegant, emotional, and deeply human. Every piece told a story of transformation, of brokenness turned into beauty. When it was time for the final walk, Nora stepped out in her golden-edged gown. The spotlight found her, and the hall went silent for a second before bursting into applause. Cameras flashed like stars. She looked calm but radiant, her eyes glistening with emotion. Tommy joined her on stage, smiling proudly as he took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing through the hall, "this is Nora Daniels, my former mentee and now my newest design collaborator." The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Some shouted her name. Others filmed the moment, capturing her grace and strength. In the shadows near the exit, Felicia stood watching, humiliated and speechless. Guests whispered around her. "That's the aunt who mocked her, right?" someone murmured. Felicia lowered her head and quietly slipped away. Back on stage, Tommy continued. "Nora's story reminds us that talent can bloom anywhere, even from pain. And tonight, I'm proud to announce that the proceeds from our joint collection, Threads of Grace, will go toward scholarships for young female designers, in memory of Nora's late mother." The crowd gasped, then cheered louder than before. Nora's hand covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The mention of her mother's name made her heart ache, but this time, it wasn't from sadness, it was from joy. She looked at Tommy whispering, "Thank you." She would have been so proud. Tommy smiled. "She is." As they bowed together, Nora looked out at the sea of faces and flashing lights. For years, she had been told she wasn't good enough, that her work was cheap, that she didn't belong. But now, the same world that once mocked her was standing, clapping for her. Her dream was no longer just about fabric and thread. It was about courage, hope, and the strength to turn pain into beauty. That night, Threads of Grace became more than a fashion show. It became a message that no matter how many people try to tear you down, your story can still shine. Weeks later, Nora's story continued to spread across the internet. Videos from Lagos Fashion Week were shared everywhere. People called her the girl who turned pain into power. Her golden-stitched dress became a symbol of authenticity, courage, and resilience. Fashion bloggers wrote about her journey. Students from design schools quoted her interviews. Young women across Africa messaged her, saying her story gave them hope to follow their dreams, no matter how small they started. Nora had become more than a designer. She had become an inspiration. David's family, who had once doubted her, now looked at her differently. They saw not just a simple tailor, but a woman of strength and grace. One evening, David's mother invited Nora for dinner. The atmosphere was quiet but warm. David's mother: "We judged you too quickly, Nora. I'm sorry. You've shown us that true class comes from character, not background." Nora, smiling softly, "Thank you, Ma. I never wanted to prove anything. I just wanted to be myself." That night, for the first time, Nora felt peace sitting at that table. She didn't feel like an outsider anymore. But one thing still weighed on her heart: Aunt Felicia. Since the fashion show, Felicia had lost many friends. People whispered about how she tried to sabotage her own niece. She stopped attending church gatherings and rarely left her house. Pride had left her lonely point one afternoon. Nora decided to visit her. She arrived at Felicia's small, quiet home carrying a basket of food. Felicia looked shocked to see her at the door. "Felicia," bitterly, "you've come to gloat? To show me how successful you are?" "Nora, gently, no, aunt. I didn't come to gloat. I came to thank you." Felicia frowned in confusion. "Thank me? For what?" "Nora, because even your cruelty pushed me to prove my worth. You made me stronger, even when you didn't mean to." Felicia's eyes filled with tears. Her voice trembled. "Felicia, I just wanted you to be more than your mother. I thought the world would crush you like it crushed her." Nora reached out and held her hand. "Nora, she was already enough, Aunt. She was kind, talented, and brave. And now so am I." For the first time, Felicia broke down, crying not out of anger, but out of regret. Nora stayed with her quietly, not to argue, but to forgive. In that moment, forgiveness didn't need loud words or dramatic gestures. It was silent but powerful, the kind that heals both hearts. As Nora left the house, the afternoon sun glowed softly on her face. She felt light, free, and whole. Later that week, she started a small foundation for young girls who loved sewing but couldn't afford lessons. She named it Threads of Grace, in honor of her mother and every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Her life had come full circle. From a girl who once stitched quietly in the shadows, Nora had become a light for others. And every time she saw her golden gown displayed in a shop window or in a magazine, she smiled. Not because it made her famous, but because it reminded her of where she came from, and how far she had come. Nora had found her strength, not in fame, not in revenge, but in forgiveness, love, and grace. Nora's wedding day came exactly 1 year later. The sky was clear, the music soft, and the air full of joy. This time, everything was different. Her gown wasn't from any famous designer. It was from her own label, Ayanda Atelier. The dress was elegant and timeless, made from the same lace her mother once owned, now reborn into something new and beautiful. Cameras flashed as guests admired her work. The press called it a celebration of resilience and love. Tommy stood proudly beside her and raised a glass. Tommy, some dresses are stitched with thread. Others are stitched with courage. The guests applauded. Nora smiled through tears, her heart full. She touched the golden lace on her gown, whispering a quiet thank you to her mother, to her past, and to every moment that had once hurt her but made her stronger. As she looked around the room, at David, her friends, and even Aunt Felicia sitting quietly in the crowd, Nora felt peace. The pain was gone, replaced by grace. Voiceover: Nora. They mocked my dress, but every stitch carried my story. And sometimes, the fabric they laugh at becomes the fabric of your destiny. The music swelled as the screen faded to gold, her brand logo glowing softly. Ayanda Atelier, woven with grace. Call to action. Corbriani besties. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Nora's story reminds us that pain can turn into purpose. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. See you in the next video. Dizzy.